Welcome, everyone. This is Jordan with Food Bevy, and excited for you to join today's workshop as we're talking about marketing trends for D2C and CPG brands, along with how to develop really great Facebook ad creative that's high converting, and how to go about planning that ad strategy process. There's been a lot of changes with iOS 14 and coming on board iOS 15 that are really throwing kind of paid advertising for a loop. And we're going to talk about some of those towards the end, but really discuss some great opportunities of helping your brand stand out and still acquiring new customers. So my guest today is Brecker Brees from Preflect. And Brecker, I'd love if you just give a quick introduction and we can jump right in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. Can everyone hear me good?
Sound great.
Awesome. So my name is Brecker. I'm a co-founder of a technology company called Preflect Ads. And basically, in a nutshell, what we've done is created a very simple system in the form of a Shopify app that's a lean, cost-effective alternative to an ad buying agency for Facebook and Instagram ads. And we predominantly serve small and medium-sized businesses, all D2C Shopify merchants. We're just in the Shopify space. And we really just love helping small businesses grow and succeed, give them great results for a very, very competitive price. We really started Preflect because we saw that the traditional agency model was broken and that the cost of having an agency was really holding back a lot of small brands from growing and scaling and expanding. And so we wanted to do something about that and really make a change and offer an alternative. It was cost effective, but also worked really well. And so that's what we do.
Awesome. Love that. So Brecker, why don't we just jump on right into things?
Absolutely. Sounds great. Go ahead and move on. Sweet. So today I'm just going to go through really what we're seeing with all of our users, specifically in the CPG space. And so we do have a lot of insights, and obviously, I hate the term expert. It's so hard to determine who's an expert and who's not. So I always tell people, take everything I say with a grain of salt, but we do see a lot of data, a lot of ads, a lot of creative, a lot of copy. And so because of that, we definitely do have a few insights that we can share. So first of all, on the note of creative, what's interesting is Facebook used to have what they called the 20% rule. And that was, Facebook used to penalize ads that had more than 20% of their surface area covered with text, right, on the actual ad creative. And they recommended always staying below this number, and they penalize the ads and sometimes even ban people for that. We found that that's totally becoming a thing of the past. We are not seeing Facebook penalize these ads anymore. And what's even more interesting is we're seeing that these ads are actually outperforming other types of static creatives. And I'll get into that in a minute as to why exactly we believe that. But it's a total 180 as to exactly what we saw working even like a year ago. So that's definitely something to think about. UGC, user-generated content, definitely crushing it now. I think that it's been a long time coming for that. A lot of people are sick and tired of seeing just very addy looking, ads. Traditional advertisement is just, started to bore people, especially with paid social. And they wanted to see regular people, right? Just like them, unbox, your products, taste them, try them, review them, talk about them. And surprisingly, a lot of consumers trust these random people more than, your company when it has the face of a corporation and not individual people. And it really comes down to the fact that people like to see other people, and they get their advice on what to buy and what they like from other people. And I think that is becoming more true than ever, especially with paid social. We're seeing on TikTok, especially. I think that's no surprise that user-generated content is just crushing it. So, for your ads that do look, for a lack of a better term, very addy, like an advertisement, definitely not, UGC. We always tell our users, never make assumptions, right? Don't assume that someone knows what your product is or what it does or how it works, right? Or who it's for. Assume that people know nothing, right? So, people don't know lingo, they don't know industry specific terms. And so they have a really hard time also remembering the millions of D2C brands that are out there now. It's hard to differentiate. And so, it's really a unique opportunity now that you can have some text overlay and things like that on your ads. Facebook isn't penalizing you for that. And it's great because now you can provide a sense of clarity, right? You can have a small opportunity. Obviously, you can't have a paragraph, but you can have a small opportunity to have a phrase or a slogan or just a couple of, couple words on that actual image that just provides an extra sense of clarity. It makes it a lot easier for cold traffic to understand who you are, what you do, who you're for, how to use your product, what it is, what it does, all of that. And I think, obviously the obvious conclusion to this is to really just never stop innovating. What we're seeing working now was not working, 18 months ago. And I think what's working 18 months from now is not going to be what's working now. I think that in terms of creative with paid social, it was very stagnant for many years where the same thing was working over and over and over again. And I think people sort of got comfortable with that. And that's not the case anymore. I think there is a faster pace to innovation in terms of creative right now. So you always want to stay on top of trends, even though it's sort of gimmicky, right? Posting memes and, whatever the latest trend is on TikTok, but people like that, right? That's what's getting engagement and that's what's converting. So you really just want to be on the up and up with what's going on. A couple of examples here. The creative on the left is an example of something that really speaks for itself, right? This is an example where you really don't need words to explain what that is. Even if you don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, that looks pretty good, right? I sent that to someone who's allergic to peanut butter, and they even told me, it might not go too well if I eat that, but it looks pretty good, right? So that's pretty self-explanatory. Then the ad on the right, this is an example of, this is like borderline in terms of the 20% rule, but now this would be totally fine. Facebook would definitely love this, and it's descriptive, right? You see what the product is, you can see the label. I think they could have added a little more text to be a little more descriptive, but that this is some sort of meal delivery service, right? And just looking at a salad in a box might not have communicated that as well as having that text. And so, it's also driving a unique selling point. It's straight to your door, right? Something like that. You don't have to pick it up, things like that. But that ad text is definitely supplemental with this. So this is a good example of that. A little bit about copy. This really ties into a lot of my points about creative. But there's a few things I want to reiterate. Definitely want to be descriptive, right? Never make assumptions. It's just, there's so many D2Cs out there right now, and there's so many brands that look so similar. And I know everyone tries as hard as they can to really differentiate their brand, but being descriptive and driving home your unique selling point definitely needs to happen both in your creative and your copy. So never assume that someone knows who your brand is or what your product is or what it does or who it's for. Also, really keep copy brief. We're seeing way too many merchants write ad copy that is like 3 or 4x the amount of length that is optimal. Most people, so if you have about 125 characters to fit into the ad copy placements where everyone will be able to read it without ever clicking like a read more or learn more button. And most people don't click those, even ones that stop and look at your ads. So you really have 125 characters to grab somebody's attention with your primary text and 40 characters with your headline. So any more than that, and there's no guarantee that the average person who even looks at the ad is ever going to read beyond that, right? So if there's some promo code stuck beyond 125 characters for primary text and 40 characters for your headline, it's just, you might as well not even have it, right? And so we always recommend keep it brief, right? The shorter, the better. And then lastly, this is really to the point of keeping it brief. Make sure that your copy is tasteful. We see that, a lot of merchants, when they offer sales, will see something about the promo code or the sale or discount they're offering with all capital letters, and it's just annoying, right? I understand you're trying to catch people's eye and things like that, but you want to be tasteful. You don't want to be salesy. You want to really make sure that you drive home a good sense of brand identity. And even, if you have an ad that you're making about your promo, your sale, or your discount, you need to always weigh that against having something in there that has to do with your brand's unique identity, your value prop, and your selling point, right? So you can be salesy, but it can't be, it has to be tasteful. Here's some copy examples to the PB&J ad. Here's some good text, right? The PB&J reinvented, shows the unique selling point, shows you how much protein is in it, because someone, if they're looking for, like a post-workout food, they're definitely going to want to know, is there sugar in it? Is there protein? Is there carbs? Things like that. And so it's descriptive, right? It tells you what it is. You can tell who it's for by this because you're listing out some nutritional information, but you're descriptive, right? This is how much protein it has. You're not just saying it has a lot. The middle one is okay, right? Come back and let us do the planning. Choose from multiple meal kit options for Friendsgiving, family dinner, or any way you're celebrating. It tells you what it is, also who it's for a little bit, but not much of a unique selling point or anything to differentiate the brand. So that one's okay. What we don't recommend and what we think is bad is something like this, right? All capital letters. I just think that's frustrating, right? It doesn't tell you anything about like what this is, who it's for, who this brand is. It's just trying to sell me product, and it's clickbaity because you're offering some big sale. It's definitely okay to talk about sales, discounts, promos in your copy, but it also has to be tasteful, and you need to have something that's relevant to your brand in there as well. So moving on to refreshing creative. So the biggest thing, when refreshing creative, be patient, but don't get lazy, right? So there's this happy medium that you need to find. So Facebook's learning phase can sometimes take upwards of 2 weeks to complete, depending on how much you're spending on ads, of course, plus a lot of other things. So really don't make any decisions before that is finished. So after about 3 weeks of declining performance, then it's time to swap out those ads with something else. And really try your best to never mess with winning ads, winning creatives. Obviously you don't want to delete them if they're making you money, but I also wouldn't edit them either, unless you really need to change something or there's an error or a typo or something like that. If you want to try something else, make a clone and do your testing with that clone. But really, you never want to touch something that's winning. And that's because, and we're seeing that this is becoming more true than even it used to. It's easier than ever to re-trigger Facebook's learning phase. Even the slightest adjustments, right? It used to be you had to increase budget 20%, 30%, or make some gigantic copy change or something like that. If you change even the smallest things to an ad set, you'll go back into learning. And so it's very easy to accidentally do that. And and because of that, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Right? Just be careful with that. So lastly, you want to constantly evolve creative direction. So this is, obviously don't be, trigger happy on making a bunch of changes, but be on top of doubling down on what's working, right? Don't once you have a very clear idea and, you've passed that 2, 3, 4 week period where you see that something is consistently winning, don't be afraid to double down. And also after you've passed a reasonable amount of time, on the other end, don't be afraid to pull the plug, right? And shift creative direction. Once you know that, you've been patient, you've collected data, and something's not working. And so that's, just as important as well. So if you get anything out of this today, I definitely want it to be this. And understanding ROAS to LTV ratio is really a key to success, specifically in the CPG industry. And I really want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about here. So I'll break it down a little bit. So ROAS stands for return on ad spend. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's the return on investment that you're getting from your advertisement spend. So if you spend $1 and you make $2 in revenue, your return on ad spend is 2x, 2 times. So a super important note about ROAS is that it's calculated based on one single purchase made at a given time, and specifically does not consider any future purchases. Lifetime value, LTV, specifically customer lifetime value is what I'm talking about, is the average amount of money a customer spends with your business over the entire time they're a customer of yours. So say that you've had a subscription, you have a subscription and it's $100 and your average customer stays a subscriber for 3 months, your customer lifetime value is $300. So one thing super duper important to remember about lifetime value is that it also incorporates those one-time buyers. So it's an average, right? So customers who buy once and never again, or churn from your subscription after the first month, they're thrown in there. And so that's incorporated into that average. So okay, so why is that important? So CPG brands really out of any other industry have the highest customer lifetime values. And that's because your products are consumable, right? People buy them, they use them, they run out of them. And if they like them, they'll come back and buy more on a regular basis, sometimes for decades, right? It's not like a t-shirt, you buy it once and you might need more t-shirts, but you don't need another one of those. CPG products, people want the same thing over and over and over and over again, even sometimes for decades. So that means that once you have a solid lifetime value, you don't necessarily need to have as strong of a ROAS as you used to, right? Because remember, ROAS is only the return on your ad spend that you're getting after a customer's first purchase. So this means that you can get away with having a ROAS of sometimes even below 1x, when you know, and you have that historical data to back this up, that you're going to make profit due to lifetime value, those repeat purchases. On average, people come back X amount of times. So really the first step to getting comfortable with this sort of strategy, and again, there is risk involved, and so that's why that last point there is be conservative, but the first step to getting comfortable with this strategy is really calculating your lifetime value adjusted ROAS. And I'll show an example in a little calculator we built to find that number. And so what this means is how much lower can your ROAS truly be to break even when you factor in all the future sales that you'll earn from a customer on average. So again, we'll do this together in a second. But yeah, be conservative, take this with a grain of salt. You always want to leave yourself, don't leave yourself no room for profit unless you're constantly increasing your retention and your lifetime value and subscribers are staying with you longer. Give yourself a generous margin of error. And as you grow, you'll be able to take on a little more risk with this strategy. But please, by all means, definitely be on the conservative side. So Jordan, I'm actually going to switch to my desktop here.
Perfect.
And show this. Give me one moment. I'm going to stop sharing and I'll put it back on because I do have a little Excel calculator here just to show exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think the other thing that happens with CPG is founders have one of two mindsets. Either one, they're looking for immediate purchase from their ads, right? Like you show an ad, someone sees it and they click on the product page and the landing page and buy. Or founders are understanding that it takes multiple iterations of someone seeing different ads and consideration going through the purchase funnel before they actually might try your product once. And I think that's really hard for founders to really get their head around as well, because it's tough out there if you're running ads and you don't see immediate purchase from them. It's hard to think about it as part of a longer funnel.
It is, and I will say this, this is definitely a strategy that is more often adopted by funded brands, right? And so I think that is an uphill battle for bootstrapped brands, but you can also use this to your advantage, right? Because if you've been around for a little bit and you have this data, it allows you to be a little more comfortable with it, right? I feel like a lot of funded brands are making very grandiose assumptions about their repeat purchase rate and making a lot of assumptions about retention. If you already have that data and it's very solid data, it's much less risky. And so Jordan, can everyone see this calculator here? Can you see my screen here?
Looks good.
Awesome. So this is just a super simple way of calculating this. So there's a lot of great apps on the Shopify App Store that give you this, your repeat purchase multiple. So the number of orders per customer on average is just your total order count divided by your total shopper count. Right? Normally we calculate this on like a yearly basis. You don't want to take longer than that to make your repeat purchases back. I wish Shopify showed this natively. I think it's kind of ridiculous that they don't. You can get it on a 30-day basis. You can get your order count, your shopper count, but not even on a 60-day, 90-day, or 365-day. I think it's kind of silly, but there are some free apps that do it, and they do a pretty good job. So say, for example, Jordan, you want to give me just some test numbers to throw in here?
Yeah, and a lot of things that we see, especially online, right? So I think 2.5 is fine for the number of customers or orders per customer per year. The average order value 45, I think, looks good to start. It's interesting because I think like gross margin being food is typically a little bit lower online, so maybe about 40%.
Okay. And so it's interesting.
Just as the rest, yeah.
So it's interesting there, right? Okay. So as the margin went down, your break-even ROAS goes up, right? So you need a higher first purchase return on ad spend, the lower your margin is, right? So I'll play with it a little bit so everyone can see what it looks like. So if your retention goes up and you can increase your average, repeat purchase multiple from 2.5 to 3.0, you don't need as high of a return on ad spend on the first purchase, because you're going to make it up on the back end, right? And it'll just keep going up. Say that you get to the point where your retention is 4x, right? People make 4 purchases at average order value. It just keeps going up. And so brands that, establish a really strong repeat rate, either if they have a subscription or they have good retention marketing, and they're getting a lot of existing business to come back. Once you have that historical data, knowing on average, customers come back 5 or 6 times, your break-even ROAS on first purchase can go lower and lower and lower. Now, obviously, it depends on the time frame of this number, right? So, like we just said, this is a 365-day number. If you want to be more conservative and you want to see what your break-even payback period is for 6 months, you could look at your average repeat order rate for 6 months, 3 months. Really, whatever your level of risk is. But if, you're not in sort of a dire financial position and you can wait a little bit to get those profits back, it's definitely a good strategy, right? So again, you want to be really conservative with this. You want to make sure that you have a good idea of how often people are coming back. You don't want to make assumptions thinking, okay, well, on average, I'm getting 2.5 orders, per customer from repeat purchases. And I think in 3 months, it's going to be 6. Oh, sorry. You want to be realistic. You want to have that historical data, but the better your retention, and I think you can kind of see this, the better your retention and the higher your repeat rate goes up, you can sustain and be profitable at a lower first purchase return on ad spend. And so I think understanding that is really important because it allows you to scale faster. If you know that you're going to make this profit back as soon as someone makes whatever the the level of repeat purchases, purchase number 4, purchase number 5, whatever, so long as you stay above your break-even ROAS, on a 365-day spectrum that you're profitable, right? So you don't need that 2x, 3x, 4x ROAS. You can sustain a lower ROAS and just wait a little longer to get those profits back. But again, you want to be conservative. You want to make sure you have a solid understanding of what your repeat rate is. And you don't want to make wild assumptions.
Yeah, what I would always say to, just in that vein of being conservative, right, especially if you're bootstrapped, is change the orders per customer down to 1 for now, right? So if you do that, then if you're looking to break even at least on their ad spend, then you need to be optimizing for a kind of customer acquisition cost of the $18 right now, right? And so it's going to be really important that you start very conservative. So you're not spending tons and tons of money on ad spend and you're constantly losing money. So you kind of need to understand these metrics. But then once you kind of have the baseline, you can adjust the other 3 variables: your orders per customer, your average order value, and potentially your gross profit margin as well, if you are able to launch more profitable products. And so kind of using this as your guideline to optimizing your e-commerce channel, but then also your ads and what you're running ads for or against can really help to make those metrics more profitable for you.
Definitely. Awesome. And anything else you want me to cover on that, Jordan? I think we got it.
No, I think that's good for this time.
Yeah, I think this is more important in your industry than anywhere else. For CPG, and understanding how retention fits into your financial predictions. It's just I can't stress enough how key I think it is. Awesome. Okay, I'll hop back over. Awesome. There we go. Awesome. So just briefly, I won't talk too much about Preflect today, but just very briefly, definitely want to thank everyone for listening in today. Great opportunity to talk to everyone. Just in a nutshell, again, Preflect really is a alternative to having an ad buyer. Right? We really try and provide that agency-like experience of having that completely, done for you system that's going to run and manage your ads for you, but for a fraction of the cost. And really, our rates are so competitive because we spend a great deal of time and a great deal of money developing a truly automated system that goes and takes on the role of really a full team of expert ad buyers. And again, our automated system keeps our costs low, so we're able to pass those savings on to our users and keep our prices very reasonable when compared to agencies. A few features that I just want to highlight. We do have our own proprietary sales attribution tracking system. I know this is something Jordan wanted me to touch on a little, and I'd love to answer any questions about tracking and iOS 14 and anything like that, because I know there's a lot of confusion these days about that. And really, this is huge because Facebook's poor attribution is starting to really negatively impact how they allocate your ad spend. right? Because they don't know anymore really which ads are converting the best. Really, the biggest problem is you'll have an ad that is crushing it on Instagram, and it's getting you a ton of conversions, but because everyone on Instagram is on an iPhone, the attribution is horrible, right? The sales are very sparingly getting tracked, and it's confusing Facebook's AI into thinking that it's a poor performing ad and it's not getting allocated enough ad spend. And it's leaving so much money on the table, and just really not allocating your money to the creatives that are truly winning creatives. So, we use our superior tracking system to actually also give ad creative rankings. So you can sort of, pit your ads against one another and really have some more confidence in knowing, which ones are working better than others. And then on top of that, using our attribution system, we've developed a proprietary budget allocation model that is just outperforming Facebook's like crazy. Again, not because we have superior technology to them, but we have better data, right? And so we're not utilizing Facebook's ABO, CBO, any of their native budget allocation functions. We found that we're attributing a much larger percentage of sales. And so because of that, we're able to allocate budget better. Again, our system's definitely not perfect. We're seeing right now, say on average, when we onboard a Preflect user, we're seeing that Facebook is missing probably around 30 to 40% of their sales, sometimes upwards of 50%. Really depends on the brand and where their ads are being seen the most. But that's sort of what we're seeing. And we're probably still missing about 10 to 12%. It's definitely not perfect. We're never going to claim it's perfect, but it's much, much closer than just looking at Facebook. And because of that, we're able to give those cool insights and also have a very robust approach to budget allocation. And so that's really, moving the needle. Just here's a couple screenshots. Super easy to use, just a one-page interface. Really, really simplifies the Facebook ad buying experience. Really what you're doing is handing off your creative to our system, writing some ad text, really telling it is this an ad for cold traffic or retargeting, and clicking start. And from there, that's where you get that agency-like experience where everything at that point is completely done for you. Here's our founding team. Ian McHugh, our founder. There's me up there. And Mark Cuban, our lead investor. Super great guy. We're super blessed to really have him as a part of the team, and very happy to be working with him and his team as well. Awesome, and that's all I got. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thank you, Jordan, for having me on.
Yeah, Brecker, definitely appreciate you walking through all these. I've actually been using Preflect for our other company, Good Food Brands, and working with Brecker on this to really test it out and some like real examples of how it works for brands. And it's been great. We've been able to drive new customers into the brand, really test out like what creative and what content is working and what's not, without me having to manage it full time. I found myself previously essentially like doing a Facebook ad campaign once and then not going in and constantly managing and updating it. And so it's nice to be able to use Preflect to essentially do that work for me when I don't have enough or really see the value of hiring like a full agency to run this yet, but also don't have the time to run it myself. So that's been super helpful. A question that came into to me here. So Brecker, years ago, marketing experts used to say that it took consumers 7 or more times seeing an ad before they took action. Is there a new metric for today's advertising?
I'd say that right now it is very difficult to tell, because again, the tracking isn't good. So it's hard to tell. There's a lot of, so what Facebook used to track pretty well was they used to be able to attribute sales that came in organically from someone that previously saw an ad, right? So say you saw an ad a couple of times and then, that brand was still top of mind. They didn't click on the ad, but they Googled you. Then they found your website and then they bought. Facebook was pretty good at picking those up, right, and attributing those as being from your marketing. Not anymore, right? That's becoming less and less. Those are slipping through the cracks in a major way. And so because of that, it's really hard to pinpoint the answer to that, right? Because a lot of that traffic, there were so many people where the individuals that, did take hitting them with a lot of targeted ads before they'd finally buy, or a lot of them didn't even really buy through the ad, right? They would Google you or think about it later or something like that. And, there's still a lot of people where they'll see an ad and then they'll look at, see on social media, whatnot, and then they'll buy on Amazon. It's just, it's so hard to track now, cross-platform and cross-device. And, you hit them a couple times on their desktop and then they buy on mobile. And it's just, the data is so fragmented that I really don't think we know with any certainty right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I've seen, just more anecdotally and less data driven, but there's really 3 groups of people who are now seeing your ads, maybe 4, but 3 main ones. The first are like being able to see an ad on mobile, click it and instantly buy is getting a lot more of the impulse shoppers. If you're meeting an existing need that person has, and you're just showing up in front of them at the right time in the right place. And so you're getting a lot more impulse buying, of course, but you're not always reaching those like really core people. So make sure you have like very crystal clear messaging on like what your product is and why they should buy, right? Yeah. And then there's a second group of consumers who are like maybe interested, but need a lot more consideration before they'll actually buy. And they're taking 2 to 10 touch points before they'll give you a shot, right? And everything from like social proof is in there that they need, and basically to convince them to even give it a shot. And then there's the third group of people who like see your ads, maybe even click on them, but in reality, they'll probably like never buy. No matter how often you do that, right? You probably have people on your email list that signed up for, the 10% off pop-up, and they'll still never buy your product. And so just knowing that those 3 groups out there can help kind of change and direct how you're, focusing your ad spend and your marketing overall.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's, I think the biggest thing too is shipping times have made impulse buying so much more attractive. Just psychologically, when you think, oh, it's going to take 10 days for me to get something, you put a little more thought into it. It's like now impulse buying when you're out and you go to the store and you think, oh, I just need bread and milk. And then you come home with 50 things. It's kind of like that with online shopping now. You can get it so quickly that it's just, I'll just, pick one of these up. It's just, it'll come in 2 days, 3 days. Whereas, 10 years ago, it would take 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And so people would think about it a little more. So definitely agree with that. Impulse buying is bigger than ever.
And then Brecker, what do you see as especially, I know there's a couple of new brands on here. What's a good starting budget to invest in social ads to start generating some reliable data?
Yeah. Best practices is you need to spend at least your average order value per day. That's what we're seeing right there. Any lower than that, and you cannot have a reasonable expectation of seeing decent optimization. If you really truly want to follow like right along the lines of best practices, I'd start at average order value, collect some data, see what your customer acquisition cost is, and then spend however much you need to spend to get 50 conversions per week. Right, that is the optimal point to optimize your ads in the most timely, efficient, and data effective way as possible. 50 conversions per week, and you'll really be able to utilize the full force of Facebook's optimization.
And then do you find that most brands end up overall losing money for a certain number of months before they start to see a positive ROI?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There's definitely a hump that you have to get over, right? It's tough. Um, Cash will be burned. You have to. It's just something that, unless you come from a branding and marketing background with a really good understanding of like the specific product that you're selling. And even then, trends change, things change. There's so many variables that, yeah, I mean, I always tell people, if it takes you, how long do you want it to take you to optimize your ads? And some people say, well, I wish it would only take a week or two. Then you ask them, if you knew it was going to take 3 months for you to hit 4x ROAS consistently, would you do it? And of course, right? There's no guarantees, but for some people, it just takes longer, right? And there really is, so long as the unit economics of your business are viable, it's just a matter of you figuring out that marketing equation, right? The right creative with the right copy and the right amount of ad spend to get the return that I need. And of course, there are some conversion rate optimization considerations on your website and things like that. But if the unit economics of your business makes sense, sometimes it just takes more time, and that's okay. And just be prepared for that, right? Budget that. That it might take you 8 to 10 weeks to really figure out what's working and have those ads become profitable. And that's just the name of the game. One other thing on that note that I do specifically want to mention is the days of, cost per clicks in the cents are gone. A good, like a killer cost per click might be like 95 cents, maybe 90 cents. We're seeing an average of, more like anywhere between a buck and $2, obviously depending on the product. But it's no one is going to get a 15-cent cost per click anymore. It's just not going to happen. And so because of that, if your average order value is realistically below, like, I want to say like $35, it's going to make it really hard to be profitable with paid social. And sometimes that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of brands, because they think, well, I don't sell luxury goods. Part of my brand is affordability, but it's just how it is. Ad costs are high. They're going up. They're higher than ever. They're disproportionately high to what they were even a year ago. And because of that, we see that the merchants that are crushing it right now have an average order value of somewhere in the range of $50 to $100. And so really the lever that can be pulled that will improve your all-around performance and scalability the most is by far average order value, because it leaves you with more profit, just in general, better profitability, but also more cash to reinvest into scaling. And that means because you can spend a little more on acquisition, you can be a little more aggressive, more competitive in the ad markets and things like that. So that's tough. And that's something that we see a lot of merchants struggling with right now.
Yeah, and especially right in the CPG overall, but especially in food, there's almost no product that, at least in a single unit, that you would buy for over $10, right? And like most of them are under $5. And so if you think about putting together a bundle that's worth $100 of $5 items, then you have to be selling 20 of them at least, right? And so I think that's where a lot of food brands struggle, is like how to really get that average order volume up. And there's different strategies around that I've seen brands do, right? Like maybe it's your recurring customers who want to buy in bulk who are willing to do that, or people who are like stocking up or buying a gift. And so having items that are available for that larger purchase point are really helpful. You might need some lead-in items where you're selling things for $30 on the lower end. But as much as you can push those higher order volumes up, I think you're right. That's incredibly crucial. And that's like a pressure that most food and beverage brands face.
Or you improve your retention, your lifetime value. And then you don't have to worry about being profitable on first purchase. Or both, right? It's good definitely to do both. CPG,
well, and that's what I tell founders all the time, right? Like a lot of founders I see jumped to, this is the I think a big fallacy is a lot of people hear about marketing funnels and you start at the top with awareness. A lot of those are like social ads and organic posts. And then at the bottom is like retention and repeat purchase. Most people will start their investment at the top of the funnel and start doing like Facebook ads out the gate without optimizing everything else down below. And the number one thing I tell founders, especially right now because acquisition costs are so high, is do everything that you can to optimize your retention rate for existing customers. How like even if you have to call all your customers individually, that will still be cheaper than trying to acquire new customers on the top end, right? Like do everything that you can to keep your existing customers, build up that funnel so that your conversions optimize once people are like make that first purchase or about to, and then kind of invest in ads, because the worst thing to do is invest in ads and have all those people drop out because the rest of your marketing funnel isn't optimized.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Any other questions from our audience for Brecker? You can either drop those in the chat, or if you want, raise your hand or come off of mute around the video and ask that directly. Cool. I know we got a couple people listening. Well, Brecker, if there's anything else to add, let me know. Otherwise, we can call it a stop for the weekend. Anything else that you want to mention or any closing thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I know that you can throw this in your community chat, but we'll definitely have a special going for food bevy merchants to try out Preflect. And if anyone has any questions about anything we went over today, especially like lifetime value adjusted ROAS, definitely reach out to us. We're always willing to chat and have conversations and help people learn, because we know stuff like this is complicated and it's so nuanced, and especially like iOS 14, there's just so much confusion. I mean, to be honest, I don't think there's anyone who fully comprehends exactly the technical intricacies of the problem, and it's confusing, and we know that. And so we're totally willing to help merchants out and explain things and give information. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Well, thanks so much. Everyone have a great weekend. Keep an eye out for the recording over the weekend around Monday. And best of luck, everyone, going into this holiday season. Thanks.